Hey folks, Randy Arsenault here, and I'm here once again with Dave Connor. Dave, how you doing today, bud?
Good to see you, brother. You well?
Yeah, doing fantastic. Thank you
Nice.
so much.
Goodness.
Listen, we have a lot to chat about because we attended an event just this past weekend, and it was really it's honoring the veterans and current and former emergency services, military personnel. But really, Red Friday was the star of the show, and I thought it was a fantastic event. I'll be sharing some details about that in the future. But I want to talk today about what happens when you call 911. And the reason why I think this is going to kind of resonate is because, well, I go by the comments and people are really wondering what happens when you call 911, but they're wondering what the difference is between fire and police. Now,
Hmm.
me with my policing experience and you with your firefighter experience, I think we can get to the bottom of this pretty quick. What do you think?
I hope we can. Let's see what happens.
Okay, so right off the bat, because I like to get controversial, I post a lot of police content naturally, and a very common comment that I get is police shouldn't be driving around looking for crime because firefighters aren't driving around looking for fires. Listen, ridiculous. I don't agree with that, but
No,
but
no.
listen, so what happens when you call 911? So I'm going to
Yeah.
go through a policing perspective really quick, and then maybe you can go through a fire perspective quick.
Love
And
to.
then, and obviously in the future, we would need to speak to a dispatcher. I want to speak to paramedics.
Happen to
But
have to know a few of those. We're good.
yeah, exactly. We can set that up.
Yeah.
So unlike the firefighters who are normally sitting at the fire hall snacking and having naps, the police, when a call comes through, the police are usually on general patrol. So
Hmm.
the police do not finish a radio call, go to the station and wait for the next call. In between calls, they're on general patrol. Very, very common. And they're on general patrol more than ever now because the computers that are inside the car, they don't even have to attend the station to do up the reports. It's very rare does the police have to actually attend the station. So when you call 911, instantly the call taker, not to get mixed up with the dispatcher, they usually ask for police fire ambulance, and the person will let them know. Depending on the severity of call, the priority of the call, from a policing perspective, uh, if somebody's breaking into your house or if somebody has trouble breathing, and listen, we'll get to that too because police and fire and ambulance often end up at the same calls anyways.
Hmm.
Uh, the call is put on a priority. A police officer on patrol or multiple officers will receive the radio call. Now, if you're doing up a report for a previous call, or if you happen to be at a call, at a radio call, but a priority one comes along, well, then the dispatcher is going to get over and say any unit to clear, and then they give the details of the call, and you can clear the call, or you can put your report on hold. You can do whatever you like. Maybe you called offline, and you can go do that call.
Hmm.
That's basically the way it is with police. Very, very rarely are police at the station waiting for a call. And what do they do when they're on general patrol? Well, that could be anything. Maybe they're
Hmm.
grabbing a coffee, and there's nothing wrong with cops grabbing coffee on while on general patrol,
Not at
or even
all.
taking a break.
Yeah.
You need
No.
a breather. But that could be traffic enforcement. So
Yeah.
you could be out giving tickets. Me, I was never, I don't like giving tickets all that much, but I liked community engagement. I would go to parks, I would go walk the mall, I would be seen. So when you call police, that's basically how it is. That's in a nutshell, and we can break it down more. But how about fire? Do I have it
Yeah.
right?
So you touched a couple of really interesting notes there. The idea that firefighters aren't out looking for fires is only partly true. There's an obligation for fire departments here in Ontario to have a public education program. Every fire department must have a program and they must use it. In addition to that, fire departments have a code enforcement function inside of the community. So, when you see them parked out in front of industrial units, sometimes that's really what they're doing. They're having a look inside, make sure if it's safe, and get the key holder information for after hours and that kind of stuff. Fire departments usually have a code enforcement division as well, which are like day shift working staff guys who do code enforcement. And always been a big supporter of those guys. They work kind of in a different circle than we do, but in operations. But I always figured that any time they shut down an unsafe workplace was a line of duty death I didn't have to attend. So I always have a ton of support for those guys. The funny bit about firemen aren't looking for fires, it's not really true. We're trying to not fight fires. There's no we like to say, there's no joy, there's no honor in fighting a fire that could have been prevented, and frankly, most of them can't. This is why, just to take a brief left, that's why we don't call car crashes accidents, because
Right.
if something can be predicted, it can be prevented. And if
Right.
something can be both predicted and prevented, it's not an accident. It may be an unhappy outcome, and you may be really displeased with the results, but not to make it an accident. I think it's important to use accurate kind of words for that sort of stuff. So when you mention someone phones 911, and the people don't realize this, I don't think 911 is a police product. Every 911 call in Ontario goes to a police service, whether it's maybe, let me think, say Sarnia Police would pick up the 911s for that area. Ottawa Police would pick up the 911s for that area. The call taker asks a few very pointed and important questions. Most people, when they call, really don't know what they want. They really don't know what their problem is, but they've got a vague idea of who they think should respond to it. So they say, 911, what's your emergency? Police, fire, ambulance. And the people will just start talking. If it's a call that has any law enforcement or public safety implications, the police dispatcher will continue to listen to the call when they send it out to the other agencies and make a determination if they need to send police as well. You're certainly right about the way tiered response works, and that's something that depends on the area and what the deal is and who's doing medicals and all of that kind of stuff. So it's very much a thing where we send more resources than we need, rather than to send one unit there and have an out of control mess that if we just asked some better questions, we'd have been better prepared for. So that's the part of that. And then the other bit is that fire really only has two response codes. There's either emergency or non-emergency. So it's not a matter of, is this a code 1 or a code 4? I know that our friends in the medic business use a code system. Fire don't do that. So it's one of those sort of deals where oftentimes people don't get what they think they want, because they don't know how the services are provided. And do we send more than we need? Yeah, and that's a good thing.
Okay, so I'm going to make this really simple. So a lot of times, is it like the movies? Is it like the movies where the firefighters are at the station and then you hear the bell go off? Because I've been to numerous fire halls throughout my career,
Yeah,
and I've seen, the trucks leave in a hurry. I've seen everybody drop their lunch, drop what they're doing, their
yeah.
workouts, get their gear on, and go. So it's just like that, eh?
Well, here, yeah, and that's something that you have to remember what the role in the society is. And if you travel through a fairly modern community, you're going to
Yeah.
bump into a firehouse every 6 or 7 kilometers.
Right,
The
right.
reason for that is that the fire protection rating for the community is based on how quickly you can get 8 firefighters on a scene. So you don't have a station, say, with 6 trucks running out of it and they're all buzzing all over the city. You're going to have them strategically located so that you can have a number of units arrive at the same time for the coverage that you need. That's why fire stations are a distance apart. In the old days, when they were pulled by horses, they were closer together because they couldn't do
Yeah.
4 kilometers in 4 minutes. It's actually 800 meters in a minute, I think is the number. I can't really tell. I'm sure one of our listeners will be happy to correct me on that. But
Yeah. You know what?
that's sort of what it is. So if the station that's near you, like right by your house, if it goes 4 kilometers east of there, hopefully on the east there's another station that's coming 4 kilometers west, so you get 8 firefighters on a scene in 4 to 6 minutes because everybody gets there at the same time.
Here's another
Ambulance services often have their stations in not so much willy nilly. They're way better now at doing proper command stations, but they used to oftentimes rent industrial units and stuff, and they run out of them because they were cheap, and their location didn't really matter as much as their response time.
Right, right. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Another reason why these videos are important, every time we have a discussion, we
yeah,
bring up all kinds of other talking points that I think we need to discuss in detail. And I think that
sure.
people find it interesting. This is something that you brought up. When somebody calls 911, you're
Mhm.
right. They don't always know what they want.
No,
And sometimes, listen, sometimes people are in danger when they're calling 911. Sometimes they can't talk. Sometimes they're very confused. And if somebody asks them, police, fire, ambulance, well, listen, my uncle needs help. He's having mental, episode now. And They may not want police there. They may not want fire, but they need help. They need assistance. They need to relay information. We're going to have to get somebody on. We're going to have to get a call taker on to break this
So,
down.
and then the other thing too is really what you're talking about is the caller is fully unqualified for determining what the
Right,
response should be.
right.
You know, so even in a minor motor vehicle collision, you're still getting fired because there's fluids leaking on the ground that need to be contained, and we can't get that stuff into the waterways. You know, people don't realize this. Those sort of
Yeah,
square shaped drains at the side of the road that we call sewers. They're not technically sewers because they don't use sewage. Those are storm drains. Their job is to get water off the road when it storms, and then it runs into the creeks and into the rivers and stuff. We got to make sure that we don't let hydrocarbons and various poisons enter into the waterway. That's really what those things are for. They're to get water off the road. People don't really know that. So we'll send fire trucks to that kind of stuff just to make sure that's not happening.
last question, and
Yeah,
really
buddy.
quick. A storm drain.
Yeah,
Okay. So if somebody's changing their oil on the
yeah,
driveway,
yeah,
and they take the old oil and they put it down the drain, that's
yeah.
going to the rivers?
That's going absolutely into the nearest waterway to your community. If you look at wherever it is you live, you'll see a headwater of a river at the top of a community. All of the storm drains, if you can get the system overlaid, they'll all drain into the creek that will become the river. So in Mississauga, pretty much everything ended up in the Credit River. You couldn't help it.
Amazing.
So we stopped stuff from getting in there with various hazardous materials response techniques to stop that. And one of the worst things is to have a big spill and then have a bunch of weather coming in that's going to make the water swell up, and then it runs down into the storm drains and into the waterways. Yeah,
The
people
thing,
don't realize that sewage. They call them storm sewers, but they're
yeah.
the sanitary sewers and storm sewers are very different animals.
The things that you don't think of, the things that people don't realize and we take for
Well,
granted.
I'll
Amazing.
close off with one thing. When
Yeah.
you mentioned about firefighters aren't looking for fire. My dear old favorite dispatcher, we get a call every few weeks of someone would call because there was a cat in a tree.
Yeah, yeah,
And his
yeah.
line was always, yeah, well, have you ever seen a cat skeleton in a tree? Because if they can get up, they can always get down, So
Fair
we don't
enough.
do that. We don't do
Fair
that
enough.
sort of stuff. Sure they are. They do what they want. Just ask them.
Brother, until
Yeah,
the next time, and
yeah.
I'm going to close off with if anybody wants to find out more about the organization, please visit redfridaytalks.help, redfridaytalks.help, all one word, and have a great day. Stay safe out there, and perhaps we'll see you again.
Yeah. Thanks for coming out, folks. Thanks, Randy. Always a pleasure.
Always.